worked all those years with me, every 2 years to get reelected so that I could get down there and do that, and to have the great privilege of representing the nicest, brightest, giving people in the United States of America. Thank you for letting me do that. I really do appreciate all the kind words, because I've got a number of members of my staff here and they need to hear that. That's going to do me a world of good. Now first, where's my district director, Patty Lahr? Patty's, okay, and here comes Cindy. Carrie Adams, who's a Rochester girl. She's doing our press now. She graduated from Harley and is living, right, staying up here now with her grandparents in Webster. Godparents. Got that? Okay. All right. Dr. Sherry Hoffman, who is the director of all of our legislation. You have 1 or 2 PhDs? Just one. Just one. Okay. I'm hard enough for one. And Katie Condello, who I think everybody knows probably is Katie from. There's Patty, backbone of the office, and been with me since I've forgotten how long. 15, 16 years, something like that. So Patty and Katie. So there she is.
Bobby's here.
Where's
Bobby?
Bobby? There's Bobby.
There's Bobby.
All right. Is that a fine-looking group? But I really am overawed about this, and I've decided I'm going to really tell you the whole story tonight. I'll be shorter for nothing. You're going to find out how this bill got passed. You want to know the whole truth? Before I start with that, though, there's a couple points that I want to make. About the same time that we were starting to work on this, we were also working on the Office of Women's Health. We had discovered, I just happened to be in the most wonderful spot. I was on the Rules Committee, where every bill went before it went to the floor, and also on the Budget Committee, where we put things in the bill, which was pretty nice too. And we had decided we needed an Office of Women's Health, because we found in 1991 that no research on medical issues was being done on women. In fact, all the research that being done at NIH was on white men. Consequently, there was no research done on cervical cancer, ovarian cancer, nothing much on osteoporosis, nothing on sickle cell anemia. So we put this great bill together, and we threw in prostate cancer because we thought they needed to do more, juvenile diabetes, because these we thought things had been neglected, and we just really didn't budget up right that year. We got a lot done. But this came up too at the same time, and Jamie's absolutely right. This really started with the Anita Hill hearings. And several of us had gotten word in the House that they were not going to let Anita Hill, they were not going to hold hearings for Clarence Thomas, anything public to let anybody have anything to say about what had happened to Anita. And so we had this spontaneous march over the House. I don't know if any of you remember that one or not. Led by the fabulous Pat Schroeder. There will never be another one like her. It was Pat Schroeder and all the media in Washington, and we all marched over. And we left Rosa DeLauro, who's an incredibly wonderful congresswoman, on the floor of the House, telling the whole world that we were going to do it. And we went in, it was a Tuesday, and we knew that all the Democrat senators got together at a luncheon on Tuesday, so we went in and knocked on the door, somehow believing in our naive way that they would say, "Come right in." Well, they told us, "You can't come in here. Who the heck do you think you are? You don't belong on this side of Capitol. Get out of here." So we went down to George Mitchell's office. He was the head of the Senate, if you remember. And we had a strange conversation with him. He was not at all happy with us. And he scolded us profusely for putting him in this ridiculous position. And then he said, what I want you women to do is go out and tell the press that we had a wonderful meeting in here and everything's going to be all right. So I said, listen, if any of you women want to go out and do that, you go out first, because I'm not going. I say that because about 2 years later, he met my daughter in San Francisco, and Robin said, somebody said, "Robin Slaughter," he said, "I know your mother." How about that, girls? So we marched over there, and we had said, "You have got to hold a public hearing here. This is a very serious sexual harassment case for a Supreme Court justice. You have got to do it." they did decide to hold a hearing. We was going to start on a Saturday morning, and all of us stayed in Washington. My daughter was living down there with me, going to American University. And so we, it was really fun. We all show up, and we think we got it made there. And we hear the first thing is that they will not let Anita Hill speak. So Pat and Senator Dixon's wife and I take Joe Biden into the back room. And we said, Anita Hill has come here to testify. The United States is ready to hear Anita Hill testify. And Anita Hill will testify. And she did. And it was a remarkable testimony. But we didn't know until about 2, maybe 3 years ago that there were 2 other women there prepared to testify, to back up what Anita Hill was saying. Now, think about that for a minute. I mean, these were the things that we put up with. So, having come through the Anita Hill problems, the last thing in the world that the Democrat senators wanted to deal with in the Senate of the United States was violence against women. So, we hear things like, let's let that woman stuff simmer down. Let's not deal with that now. Well, we'll take that up a little later. We said, no, we're going to do it now. We got to do it now. The figures were awful. And as Phyllis' letter pointed out, we started working on this, and we started a rape crisis when I was in the state legislature in the 80s. There weren't any rape crisis centers in upstate. And we had the women put together this group to go and talk to the Speaker of the House, Stanley Fink, at the time was it was exceptional Nancy Pelosi, the best speaker the world ever had. And of course he was going to do it, but we had to go through the ritual. And I remember talking to him about rural counties that we'd all represented up here, and what it must be like to scream for help in a place where you know that nobody in the world is going to hear you. And we talked to women who literally had no idea of anything that they could do. In fact, one who worked for me, we'd gone over to Geneva one night for some kind of meeting, and her father had died when she was 4 or 5 years old, and she married her high school sweetheart, and he literally beat her to a pulp. And she believed, because her father had died so young and there had been no men much in her life except her priest uncle, she thought that's what marriage was. And that night over in Geneva, listening to people talk about it, was the first time she started to cry, and she said to me, I know now it was okay that I left him. I should have done that. That was good. I mean, the relief that she had had, that all her life she had made a mistake, she had failed, somehow or other she had not followed through. And so many women think that. And one of the most blessed things that Phyllis Corn did among thousands that we could talk about, there was nobody like Phyllis. She knew that the children in the shelters, many of them had never in their lives seen a gentle man. And so the boyfriends and the spouses and the fathers and everybody, the nephews, everybody could come in, and they would sit with the children and read to them and play with them, so that they knew that men were not just for punishing. And imagine to be able to think of something like that in the middle of all that chaos, when all you want to do is stop the pain. She wanted to let those children grow up knowing that that was not the proper way to behave. And it made such a difference in their lives. But we finally got it passed. We had a hard time getting it through the Senate. I want to be honest with you. I must have a dozen pictures, even some with Janet Reno. And I thought we were going to bring some tonight, but we didn't. Oh, all right. And Pat and me, I talked to Pat a lot. You're not knowing Pat Schroeder would be one of the sorrows of your life. There's just nobody like her. She was elected to Congress. She had a baby, and she took on the floor with her with Pampers. And she got put on the Armed Services Committee, and she very much wanted to be on that committee. And she joined in with a guy named Ron Dellums from California, who was about 6'8", the handsomest man you ever saw in your life. Wore dashiki, everything. It's just absolutely gorgeous. And the chair of the Armed Services Committee made the two of them sit in the same chair. He didn't want her there.
Oh my God.
And I think finally that one of the reasons that she left Congress was that she knew she would never chair that. So anyway, we were, working really hard to get it passed, and we finally did. And at the same time when we did the women's health issue, and a lot of our fellow men didn't understand the importance of it, until it passed, and it was so popular, and women were so involved in it, that almost every male colleague we had asked us if we would come into their districts and talk to them about what we were doing about women's health. As I said before, there was no research at all done on most of the things that plague women. Because we had hormones was the reason given to me. And as I pointed out, yes, we do. But we're also more than half the population, and we pay a lot of taxes. And we wanted in on the action, so we got that. But we have never had a problem reauthorizing the Violence Against Women Act until 2013. The Senate passed it, no problem. And some of my Tea Party friends in the House thought that they would change it around a little bit. And so they gave us a bill that excluded the protection of the violence against women for Native American women, immigrant women, and LGBT women. And we said, get out of here with that. We are not going to do that. And we didn't. And we got a bunch of our good Republican friends, including one of my favorite Republicans from Oklahoma, Tom Cole, who is part Indian. And he worked very hard with us and convinced so many of his friends that we could do it. Let me tell you, you know that everybody knows that Congress isn't working, because I said the other night, I sure am. But at any point when we wanted to pass anything of value to the Americans, the country, to move us ahead, Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats were willing to give Boehner all the votes he wanted. But they wouldn't do it, so they spent 55 times, $79 million voting to kill health care. So let me go again about the violence against women. We may think we've come a long way, but we still do have work to do. And I suspect that most of you don't know that until we passed the Affordable Health Care Act, that there were 8 states and the District of Columbia that allowed violence against women or spouses, domestic violence, to be a precondition, a thing you had had already, right? And the theory that if you had been beaten up once, you could be beaten again, and so it was something that was just innate there, and the insurance companies didn't have to cover you. So one of the many things we did with the Health Care Act was in order to really make that a difference. So we're there now. We're doing a lot more. We're working now. We just got a report from GAO. It's going to work on what's happening with women scientists. We have had to write this stuff down so many times. We found out that women scientists in universities are often shortchanged. They're not given the proper mentoring. They are not given the grants. They are not invited to the right meetings. Years ago, I wrote a bill to that wrote that down, just like that. They have to be invited to the right meetings. And we kept hearing cases of people getting Nobel Prizes, and a woman had been working with them all the way through, but the men got the prize. Enough already. We need to recognize so much of what the women in this country give. And let me give you just a bit of history about why I'm so proud and why all of you are here. This is an extraordinary place. I met a few people here tonight who are new to Rochester. Let me tell you what this is about. About the 1840s, 1850s, there were a lot of men of great importance here in Rochester, the great titans who started the city. And their wives and daughters, being totally unable to work, joined up in a group called the Rochester Female Charitable Society. Have you ever heard of that? You know that? Okay, good. Probably some members here. Right? The women divided the city into sectors, and a woman was given a sector, and within her, it was her responsibility to make sure that there was food, that the children were educated and fed and kept well. And this was so important. They built the first hospital. They started Hillside. They started the Rochester Friendly Home. And I'm told that Franklin Roosevelt based a large part of the New Deal on what had happened here in Rochester. I tell you, things happen here that wouldn't happen anywhere else. And one of the reasons that I've been able to go down there and be the mouthpiece and make a lot of racket is because all of you have always stood behind me and expected me to do that. You enable me to. I'm just grateful as I can be, all to those of you who have steadfastly stuck with me. I do know there are people here that I'm the only member of Congress they've ever known. I'm a little bit self-conscious about